Enough. Team, anyone's game. 4 o'clock slot. It's not as deadly as the 5, right? Normally what I get when I present to conferences of teachers, and they're not game-oriented, right? I generally get the sort of Saturday morning at 8 a.m. death slot, right? It's like, where does a network television program a show that they've decided to kill? Friday at 9, right? The only show to ever Phoenix-like rise from Friday at 9, The X-Files, right? Then they moved it to Sunday at 8, had 20 million views. And then they lost the way and it became a terrible show. But that's a second issue. Want me to wait, or shall I proceed?
I feel like we got it.
All right, good. Then let me proceed. Good afternoon. How we doing?
Good.
Yeah? Good. There is an audience interactive component at the end. I will try to make it interesting and not super intimidating. But we'll get to that. Okay, my name is John Cassie. I am the Director of Curriculum and Innovation at TVT Community Day School. It is the Jewish Community Day School of Orange County, California. So that's where I'm from, Southern California. And I'm delighted to talk to you guys about something that is of increasing interest to me, but that I'm sort of still, in some respects, workshopping. So I hope that you'll give me some perspectives or put me in line with some games I ought to play that I don't realize I haven't played, or that I should be thinking about, or framings for this question that are, that are of interest to you, but that I don't bring up. I'm also the host of the Game Level Learn podcast, which is a podcast about game-based learning. We're in season 4 right now. If you're interested in trying this or doing this, or if you have any interest in this topic, we've got about 40 episodes up for you to enjoy and to give us feedback on. So, like I said, I am Director of Curriculum and Innovation, but for our purposes, more importantly, I started game mastering in 1979 when I was 12. Okay, I am not 12 here. This is me game mastering in college, a game that is near and dear to my heart that no one plays anymore called Rolemaster. Super crunchy, lots of fun charts, right? I like the way it resolves. Combat damage, right? Rather than sort of being like, you're dead, right? In that game, it has this mechanic whereby critical hits are applied, and they very rapidly degrade your ability to continue fighting or to go on. I've been game mastering forever. I've been playing board games forever. I love games. I love what they do, how they can help us to learn, and just to build social networks and social environments. So that's what I'm concerned about. As a game-based learning teacher and as a speaker on game-based learning and gamified instruction, this is my core thesis, namely that education in the industrial age served a particular social and cultural agenda, which is no longer productively served by the way we do, we ought to be doing education now. And that non-Generation X students, millennial students, Generation Z students, are much better served by teachers who have a wide range of capacities and resources and skills. Game-based learning is a really great method because it cares about what we ought to care about going forward in the 21st century. Namely, creativity, collaboration, working together, that sort of thing. The skills that we care about. Games are really, really good at developing. So that's why we ought to care about it. A couple of other definitional points. Game-based learning and gamified instruction are not the same thing. Do not confuse them. This is where folks often start out going wrong, and then they stay going wrong. In game-based learning, you take a game as designed, and you play it out of the box as designed without modifying it, because it serves some kind of learning objective you have as an instructor. So this is a photograph of the game Manchikoro. Inexpensive, accessible to everyone. It's about building a community, an ideal community. You roll dice and you buy buildings, etc. Okay. Well, third grade social studies is ultimately about building community. Play the game, have students think about community as an abstraction, then rather than having them be assessed by making something out of paper mache, which is totally fine, right? Instead have them redesign Manchikoro to reflect what would be the components of an ideal community in their world. Make us 10 buildings that in your mind would make your ideal community. You get a lot more out of young minds from that kind of experience than from the other. Game-based learning is great, but it has its limits, because most games as designed are designed to be fun, not to accomplish a learning objective. Most educational games as designed fit a learning objective, but are bad games. So you have to be mindful of that. Okay. Gamified instruction is take the mechanics of some game. It doesn't really matter what it is. If you think the mechanics are fun, strip away the game's content, leaving only the mechanics, and then figure out what learning objective you have that would be productively approached by means of those mechanics, and design a learning experience that uses those mechanics. So, this is a raid team from the most successful, massively multiplayer online role-playing game ever published, World of Warcraft. I designed a history class that was about contemporary age America, roughly 1970 to 2010, that functioned exactly like World of Warcraft. You had to level in different kinds of knowledge about American history. You had to do things that historians do that earns you experience points. You had to accomplish things by means of unusual ways of doing the work so you could earn achievements. If you got to level 100 and you earned enough experience points and you got enough achievements, you got an A in the class. There was no way to not get an A. There was no other grade. Well, there was. N. You got an A, that was defined by me as you are authorized to level. And N meant you were not authorized to level. You know, you did the quest, but you did it wrong. I'm looking for 8 dragon eggs, and you brought me 8 bear eggs. There are bear eggs, but you know what I'm saying. Right. Sorry, that's great, but I was asking for, tell me about the state of women in the United States from 1980 to 2000. Not the state of GLBTQ Americans. So bring me the right stuff, and you're authorized to do that. Think about a game like Mysterium. How many of you played Mysterium? A couple of you? Okay. Mysterium is about abstract communication, ultimately. Okay. Well, imagine having your students in your chemistry class redesign the art cards such that they thought they conveyed notions of chemical abstraction within the art. That's up to them to determine what that is. Then have them run through the Mysterium, you know, the who, what, who, where, with what scheme, but instead of it being, you know, Lady Knitting Needles and you know, the Postman, it's chemical concepts that the abstract art has to get the people to match. Okay. That's the Mysterium engine, which we know is fun, suited to or directed towards a learning objective. Okay. Keep these things separate in your work, and you can't go wrong. Confuse them, and you may lose purchase on the one great thing about this, which is game-based learning and gamified instruction will, by definition, increase engagement, increase the desire of your students to persist and keep at it. I think we know that for most, just one method doesn't work. You've all been learners. Remember the teacher whose method wasn't suited to you? We've all had it. The goal here, give you more tools, more capacity, and therefore you can reach more kids. I have never done something like this and had students mad that it didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Any educators in the room beside me? Surely we've tried things, and it's like, yeah, swing and miss. That didn't work. That didn't work, right? Better for it to fail under those terms than it failed because you just chose to lecture. And that's always going to fail your non-listening learners. Even though it's easy for you, right? I mean, I'm an educator. I mean, surely my fellow educators in the room will appreciate this. If you tell me to fill an hour, I can fill an hour. You need me to fill 2? Aces, I'm good. 3? All right. 10 minutes? Whatever you need. I'll fill it. Okay? But it's not productive for all learners. So, that's the framework. Now, social emotional learning. My school cares ever more about this. The mission of my school is very simple. We are a Jewish school of inquiry and innovation where academics are important and character is paramount. That's the whole mission of my school. I do the innovation side, but my colleagues work on the character side, and I want to engage game playing in that work. So social and emotional learning is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. It couldn't be easier to see the way this overlaps with role-playing games, to me, than this. Okay. A little graph for you that I'm going to use to sort of structure the rest of my remarks. We live in a world where we're all in this together. The school is no longer in a place where it can act independently of the student or the family. And so the first principle on this graph to keep in mind is the school and the family working together can make great progress. For me, this hits all of the marks. What is social emotional learning? It's these 5 notions in the middle. Each of them we can work on in a classroom context and can move the lever in some respects. Okay. So I'm going to talk about that, about those notions now. But first, I want to give you a little bit of game theory. How many of you have heard of this notion of the magic circle? A few of you? Yeah. The idea here is you have reality, and as Jane McGonigal said in her seminal book from 10 years ago, reality is broken. Why would people spend 10 billion hours performing work in World of Warcraft for digital rewards when there's a climate crisis, or there's a million crises that would be well served by that 10 billion hours of work? Instead, that work has been performed in World of Warcraft. Why? Because reality doesn't give you any rewards, but games do. Figure out how to fix reality. Maybe you're in with a chance. That's our thesis. Okay? This concept. Reality has all sorts of problems. Within a game space, you can make the utopian promise a living thing, because you eliminate those things in reality that make reality disagreeable, like racism, maybe, or sexism, homophobia. In many games that I've played, it simply doesn't matter how old you are or what gender you are or whatever. If you're a better player, you're going to win. That's what the game cares about. Can you play the game? Are you any good at it? Surely, I can count 10,000 World of Warcraft players under the age of 14 who are better players than me. And they probably have better guild raid leadership skills than me. I'm not very good at that. I would gladly follow a 14-year-old under those terms. You ought to as well. Why? Because they can help you accomplish your objective. As though the only thing that gives experience is age. It isn't. I say it as an old person. But I think it's true. The Magic Circle says the tighter you make the boundary between your game and reality, the more viscerally you're like, I would describe them as bookish spellcasting types. And every game has bookish spellcasting types, right? It's not just, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, right? I have game mastered for the last 9 years a campaign of Numenera, okay? And I'm a total nerd, right? That's just who I am. But surely you know what I'm talking about. Why? Because I'm a sort of bookish and sort of nerdy type who likes to learn things, right? And I can inflect that towards like trying to accomplish the good, right? Being sort of like more towards the, you know, like, let's make things better for everyone, right? Or I can inflect it more towards like, I must know everything, right? And that just gives kind of a shake, because frankly, that's me, right? I want to know everything. Please let me get the technology that lets me just insert knowledge into my head directly before it's too late, right? And the way that I play reflects my sort of bookish and sort of nerdy kind of tendencies, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's a video game, but when I play Red Dead, my character creation is very anatomically correct. I took a lot of pleasure in making it look like me.
Yeah.
And in playing the game, there's so many action mechanics that you build your morality, right?
Right.
So I'm an idealist person, so I go for high morality.
Right.
If I'm having a bad day, you know, I'm going to
Yes.
blow some heads off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very much
and
a
the game will
reflection.
consequence you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which is fine, right? We've all had those moments at work where it's like, I can't believe I just said that. Oh.
Sounds like it.
Right? Oh, that's going to come back and haunt me. Please let it not haunt me forever, you know, right?
Yeah, I can remember playing World of Warcraft and being like a Tauren shaman, and then one of these other guys, like the undead group or whatever, says, "Here, I've got a quest for you. Hey, go kill this guy just because I hate him." I'm just, no, I'm not doing that quest. It's just because I was playing a relatively good shaman, you know?
Right.
It's just like, it's a quest. My kids were like, it's just a quest, just do it. No, he's just a mutant monster.
Full stop. Right? I mean, the present patch of World of Warcraft has the two factions deeply at war with each other. Okay? And it begins with one of the factions essentially destroying the home of the Night Elves. Okay? And the character who does it is this iconic character named Sylvanas. And she's been working this agenda that she's on for about 10 years within the game. Okay? My story, to your point. Ever since that happened, my partner is, I play World of Warcraft, he lives World of Warcraft, right? He loves World of Warcraft more than anything, more than me, right? He loves it, right? And this patch shattered him. Why? Because his primary character, his main character who's been playing for 10 years is a night elf, druid, and he said, This character would never leave Darnassus, the city that Sylvanas destroyed. Never. So what the hell am I going to do now? My main, I will not play. Can't do it. He's there, he's in Darnassus. And if he burns alive, that's what happens. So he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because all my other characters are Horde characters. And I will be dadgummed if I'm going to play a Horde character. I will not do anything to support anything Sylvanas does. So he's like, I don't even know what to do now. I got to figure it out. Maybe start an alt. He's like, he was shattered. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to do this stuff over here, play my alliance guys, because that's cool. And, you know, this story has some troll elements, so I'll bring this troll druid. I won't do any of that stuff. I won't do it, right? To your point. I could avoid doing it, right? Blood elf. Well, the problem with Sylvanas is yet again, she refuses to go as far as is necessary. She convinces, you know, so it's like your point about, well, I've had a day where I need me some warlocks. Excellent, right? All of that in the hands of a 12 or 13-year-old, properly guided by an instructor who thinks about learning and identity. Wow. It's an extraordinary opportunity. And every role-playing game gives you that opportunity. They all do. Doesn't matter. Some of them are crunchier. Some of them are, when I say crunchy, I mean that they have a thick rule book and they have a lot of different kind of numerical things, mechanical things going on. It can be challenging to, but they don't have to be that hard. Every game will let you do this. Have you heard of this notion of bleed? Has anyone ever? Darcy, you've heard, you know what this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to?
Sure. Bleed can be when the emotional impact of things that are happening in your day-to-day life are kind of showing up or coloring the story you're telling in the game, or where something that happened in the game is sort of still with you even when you've left, right? You know, had a really emotional moment in the story and you're still angry or you're still caught up in it. So the bleed through.
Right, it's the sense of where do I end and my character begins, and vice versa.
If you haven't killed your character, because you owe him $20.
Yeah.
Sturdy play, isn't it, right? I've got friends who, if I had them sitting there and I said, tell me about Iceland. Okay, this was a game that I GM'd 30 years ago. Because of bleed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what does this mean for you as an educator? If you create a role-playing context that lets a student who would not normally tell you anything to play a character authentically, and you are paying attention as the game master / teacher, you will see what you need to work on with that student, because the student is likely to express in their character what they might not express in their person. It is extraordinary, but you have to pay attention as the game master. You have to really know what you're doing to see, oh, okay, a little note of that. I'm going to come back to that with you when we're not in a game session. Just tell me about, you seemed really invested in head chopping today. Work me through that, right? Because in my experience, I can get middle schoolers and high schoolers to open up. But if you have an angle, it's like a lever. It just opens the door much more easily. So that's the first argument that I would make. And you know, look at this point here. Even character creation, just by itself, don't even play the game. That alone can be a powerful learning experience, both for the student and for you as the student's teacher. What are some character creation systems you love? In and of themselves. You ever thought about that? Go back through the games that you play and really study their character creation systems. I'm a big fan of Burning Wheel, which has this kind of it cares a lot about lifespan development. Okay? I was on a podcast talking about Star Trek as a role-playing milieu. I'm a Trek, guy. Don't hate on me if you don't like Trek. Don't hate on me. No, I'm kidding. And I was talking about a game from the 1990s called Star Trek that was published by a company called FASA that had a fantastic lifespan development system. Peerless. You could use it for anything. Love it. Okay? So go back and study your character creation system. If you are so interested, it's not up yet, it'll be up middle of this week. A colleague of mine presented at a conference called Game Level Learn that I organized in California. Did this very thing, character generation, to help students understand the experience of Jewish immigrants entering the United States through Ellis Island in the late 1900s. And because his students were sixth graders without role-playing experience, he used No Thank You Evil as kind of the framework, right, to understand it. No Thank You Evil is Numenera light for kids kind of thing, right? It helps take Numenera's also peerless character creation system and bring it into ever simpler plans, depending on how old the person you're playing with is. So definitely check that game out. Okay, so first thing, self-awareness. Second, well, management of the self is a key part of social emotional growth. Surely you can remember those times in your life when you acted impulsively or acted out of turn, which you would never do now because you've developed your executive function. And maybe, right? Yeah, I'm still working on it, right? Because you can create circumstances in games where action and consequence is crystal clear, you can go out of the game and talk to the student at that point after you've played it and get them to see the connection that they might otherwise not have seen in their own behavior. But from a character lens, they can understand it. If they watch the Hulk, if they watch the Hulk do what the Hulk is doing, they get it. They watch themselves acting like Hulk without knowing they're doing it. They don't get it. It's shocking how true this is. It ought not to be, but it's totally true. I was thinking about the great game Dread. You know the game Dread? It's sort of an indie horror kind of game. It's hard to port into a middle school context. You could do it in high school.
Is that the Django one?
Indeed, yeah. What better way to teach about consequences than a task resolution system based in a dexterity game? Now, I didn't have any Jenga photos, but I had a photo of my friend Maylin playing a game called Bandu, which is an extraordinary dexterity game. You should play it. Okay? See the gap? She's just about to put this ridiculously heavy piece on this little plinth that can't possibly hold it. Right? Well, you're going to understand action and consequence when you play that game. Third, responsible decision making. Now, I went into a board game space here for you because if you don't know this game, you ought to. How many of you have played the board game or the video game This War of Mine? You played it? You might have played it as a video game. You played it?
Both.
Oh. It's probably the hardest game I've ever played. It's not hard mechanically. It is hard emotionally.
Yeah.
Would you agree, Don?
Yeah.
Yeah. Devastating.
It's a lot of hard decisions to make.
Right. The basic idea is this. You and your fellow players are responsible for shepherding a couple, 2, 3, depends on the game state at the beginning, a couple of survivors of an ongoing, devastating civil war that has placed a city like Sarajevo, under siege. You have to keep these people alive until there's an armistice. It starts out barbarically hard and gets worse. And the winning condition requires that not only are there a certain number of people you start with alive, but that they're healthy enough and with sufficiently high morale that when the armistice is signed and they're saved, their lives are not ruined. Now, you could play that game for a single class period and have students reflecting journals about each decision they had to make, because every single decision matters. Am I going to feed you or you? We have enough bandages for you or you. You're better at going out of the house. You're better at improving people's morale. You know how to cook. Right? Yeah, go.
There was a situation where you, at least in the video game, you managed to recruit a soldier who defected.
Uh-huh.
And his stats to protect everybody are great,
Uh-huh.
but he suffers from extreme PTSD,
Uh-huh.
which also reduces his effectiveness.
Uh-huh.
And you have to make such a heavy emotional decision. I, as a veteran,
Ah,
deal with
Oh.
PTSD as well.
yeah.
And I sat there for 3 hours thinking, what am I going to do with this guy?
Precisely. Right? That is what makes this game one of the most extraordinary designs, in my judgment, in contemporary gaming. The video game is too much. I can't do it. I tried. On day 22, I had a character die basically because of my idiocy. It's my fault. I was like, I can't do this. The board game I played regularly with a nephew of mine who was really interested in the ethical dimension of it. Okay. It's super easy to play. You get a rule book, and there's 100,000 pieces obviously, but you get a rule book, and essentially you just open the rule book and it tells you what to do. Read this, do it, hand the book to the player to your left. Turn the page, do these things, decide these things. Give the book to the next player, turn the page. Okay. So everyone is doing something. Whoever has the book is the final arbiter. Now, you want to test responsible decision making? Put 5 of your students around this table and let them know that the person with the book decides. Well, you only need 10 minutes of play before you're invested in these characters. And now we're in. And then you're going to decide something, and some random nonsense is going to happen that's going to undo everything you wanted to do anyway. Play this game. And play with your kids. 7th grade and above. Okay? Probably too, frankly, emotionally intense below grade 7. But I think at 7 you can manage. Okay, the building of relationship skills. How many of you have played The Quiet Year? Just us.
It's so good.
It's so good!
It's great.
Okay? Go play it tonight. Okay? Probably the best role-playing experience I've ever had in my entire life was playing this game once. Okay? It was at Gen Con, the big gaming convention in Indianapolis. Like I said, I've been playing since 1979, 89, 99, 09, what is that, 40 years? 35, 38 years, okay? Everyone else I played with was about my age. We sat down, and we looked at each other, and we were like, we've got a century and a half of game mastering experience at this table. This ought to be good. And it was ridiculous. Okay? Here's the notion of the quiet year. I can give it to you in 15 seconds. You are a community. You have just emerged from something terrible. You have a year to get your community in order before something else inevitably happens. You're playing as the community. On a turn, you flip a card. It says, resolve this question or this question. The oldest member of your community dies. How does your community respond? Or the youngest member of your community dies. How do you respond? Or a member of your community has decided to leave your community. Why and what are the consequences? And the basic gameplay is that you tell a 2 or 3 sentence story about that. And then I either do what's called have a meeting, where I give you 1 sentence of interpretive comment on that, and then everyone else in the game does the same thing. You're never a person, you're the community, okay? So you speak on behalf of everyone, right? Or you start some kind of a project. It's a social mapping game, right? So everything that you do in your community, you write on a piece of paper, okay? Now in this case, I was playing it with some other friends. This was not the Peerless game. I didn't say that. But so we build a water wheel, and we build a gold mine, and we built our community around this beautiful tree because we had a forest, right? But there were people who left the community because they were upset, and they went and lived in a meadow. Okay, and this expression, you could say this to any friend of mine who played this game. Travis is a meadow name, right? It's like, how dare you name the child in this community Travis? That's a meadow name, right? Oh, people are totally into it, right? 3 hours with people who don't noodle around, 4 hours tops with people who like to noodle, okay? But it's all about community relationships. It's what the whole game is about. Okay? The designer, Avery Allen, has designed, in collaboration with another designer whose name eludes me, 2 more games, Dream Askew and Dream Apart. One of them is about GLBTQ communities in a post-apocalyptic context. The other is late 19th century Shtetl. Play any of them, but Quiet Year is a masterpiece. Okay? And if you have not played it and you care about games, well, you got to play it. Okay? Now, so that's my gnome. Remember when I said, nerdy, leaning towards defending the good? That's for it's my little gnome, right? Look, social awareness. All role-playing games build a sense of empathy, or ought to, or have the capacity to. You wouldn't think World of Warcraft would be such a game, but if you center yourself in the character and in the world that exists, it can be pretty extraordinary. It's like the point about my partner saying, I can't play this character anymore because he would be dead. Well, that's a profoundly empathic connection to a people who were destroyed within the game. That's why people in the previous example were so angry about this Travis thing, because they had committed to the forest, not the meadow, right? The degree to which you can match the game objectives for learning objectives, the better this is going to work. And if you're an educator who's also a gamer, you can probably think of games that you play that you like, that you could really kind of work on. In my own game mastering, like I said, I've been game mastering Numenera for 9 years. Same campaign, same people. Okay, this is pretty typical for me, frankly. When I do this, no, we don't play every week. Right. Back in the day, the old picture, with the great hair. Right. That was every week, almost without exception. Same characters, same players, same game world, 4 years. At least 8 hours a session, sometimes 10 or 12. So what is that? That's the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours in 5 years, right? But in this Numenera game, and this idea I've been riffing on as an educator, you'll have to tell me what you think No, Numenera is set in the ninth world of the human condition, and it's sort of weird tech and dying Earth and this kind of all these great tropes. They were interacting with the galaxy-level intelligence that they probably shouldn't have been interacting with, and interacting with tech that they didn't understand how it worked, and they did some things that they ought not to have done. And so I said, okay, well, we're going to stop for now. And then I came back to them and I said, you've done something you really ought not to have done. Here's how I want to adjudicate it. You've taken the nine worlds and you've broken them into 1,000. Okay. I want to continue playing Numenera. You're going to continue to earn experience, and your characters are going to be the same. But until such time as I think you have learned your lesson, we're going to actually play we're going to play a sub-game. And we're going to try out some other game systems as we play. Okay? They were like, oh, that's a great idea, because I've been wanting to play but I don't want to leave this Numenera game. All right. So we played a game called Hillfolk. It's a drama system, very storytelling. We're Star Trek people, so we're playing the Wadifia Star Trek game right now. It's the same character that they're playing in Numenera, inflected into the new game system. And my adventure design is designed to pull out of these fragments of character aspects of things they need to learn, so when they go back into Numenera in 2022, they've learned what they need to know. Pretty extraordinary fun, right? So think about character and inflecting them into different game systems, and you can learn a lot about identity that way. At least that's what's happening to us. We did Hillfolk, we're doing Wadifia Star Trek. Invisible Sun is next, because it's extraordinary, right?
Your heart.
I very nearly destroyed that box.
You're not the first.
I was about to take a knife to it after I tried for 30 minutes to get it open. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Worth every penny. Impossible to figure out how to open the box because I'm an idiot. And I was like, my name is John, my partner's name is John. I was like, John, I cannot do this. I'm going to throw this box away. He went over to it, 3 seconds. You're dead to me. You know? I love him, he's lovely, but makes me crazy. Okay, so we are at, we're at the 45, okay. We're going to do a quick little exercise together. I wrote a book called Folkways, which is about creating realistic, meaningful cultures to embed characters in. It's for a system called Heart, which is Rollmaster Light, but the game is universal. You could buy it and use it as is in your own creation. My theory is this. If you're going to have characters who do meaningful things, they come from cultures that have answered questions about what they care about. Okay? So, like, for instance, in Lifespan Ways, I write about how does the society organize youth, infancy, adulthood, and old age. Our culture discards the elderly. Some cultures revere the elderly. Okay? You have to decide, because that's going to shape some aspect of the way your character interacts with the world. Leisure ways. What do your people do for fun? Heart has a race called the Grits. They're basically like half-orcs, so they look like, really big and tough, right? I designed a culture where the Grits Commonwealth, the people, the nation of the Grits, their leisure ways is entirely centered around competitive gardening. And what they do is 6 weeks out of every summer, all of the garden, they all travel around the country examining each other's work, and they come to some sort of conclusion about who's going to win as a result of it. you would never, ever come to that conclusion unless you ask yourself the question in the first place, what do they do for fun? And once you have that answer, well, then you know all kinds of things about them that you wouldn't otherwise know. Therefore, if you were to create a Grixian character in that cultural context, you would have all of this rich depth that otherwise would be missing. So why not know it, it seems to me, rather than not. Okay. Now, this is to create cultures, but the principle applies to creating characters as well. Okay, so what I was thinking might be fun is, what if we had a middle school setting for a role-playing game? Okay. And I'm calling it Jan Brady Middle School, home of the Marshalls. If you know the Brady Bunch, the joke really works. If you don't, it doesn't land, right? Jan, the middle daughter, constantly complaining that nobody loved her. It's always Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. Trust me, it's really fun.
So sure, Jan.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to be of a certain vintage. Just go into YouTube. Or, you know, the other
Or
tubes
TV
that
Land or something.
that you young children use. And just type in Jan Brady, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. Trust me, it's worth at least an hour of good fun. Okay, so if you were designing a middle school as a setting, and you wanted to accomplish some of the self-regulation, responsible decision, you know, you wanted to create a gameplay mechanical context that would allow you to proceed. What might the character statistics be? What are some things that you might use to define or attribute the character?
Popularity.
Popularity, right? Has to be. Yeah. Grades, which sort of stands as a proxy for how popular you are with teachers, right?
Extracurriculars?
Yeah. Right. What do you do, right?
Maturity.
Yeah. Positive modifiers when attempting to influence adults, negative modifiers when you're attempting to influence your peers.
Income. Whether from job or parents or steal.
Could be from anywhere, right? Yeah, okay, what else?
Willpower. Willpower.
Sure.
Is this your question?
Many people in their 20s can look back on when they were 13 and say, if only I hadn't decided that, right? So that's what willpower cares about, right? Okay, what else?
Emotions or like mental health, but
Yeah, like an emotional state, right?
health in general probably. And personal interest. Personal interest, what they're interested in, what.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, like hobbies. Or like,
Dinosaurs. Right.
That's a stat.
right, this is like,
That should be its own stat. How much of a dinosaur?
what's your dinosaur stat? Higher than yours. What's your dinosaur stat? Brontosaurus, what do you have? Right? This could also be things like, are you a theater kid? Band? An athlete? Right, and you play the right sport, right? Because maybe in the school, this is a hockey school, and everyone who runs track is a nerd.
And if you pick a particular sport, then might have different, health stats, right?
For sure. Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking more of the personal rewards and the payoffs that go with
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm sorry, personal values
Ah, yeah, okay.
and the rewards that go with it.
Yeah, you want that, wouldn't you?
Some are better for stats and other ones are more like.
Yeah, these are things that define a character in this context, right? Some are going to be stats and some are going to be skills and attributes or whatever. But you want to know these things about whoever you're playing, it seems to me, right? Yeah.
I was thinking you could even maybe the way to do this would be to subdivide popularity. You could have popularity among peers, but also then popularity or relationship with the adults.
Totally.
You also said previously, someone wrote a book about what makes somebody happy.
Right. Is that something that makes you happy, something that's public, or is it something that's private? Right. Do you face it externally or do you face it internally? Right. That, certainly I know many students who derive great joy from game playing or who knows what, but would never share it in a school setting, right? Because the consequences would be, right.
Challenges.
Yeah,
And that could include like physical or mental impairments and disabilities.
right. It could be.
Not disabilities, but you know what I mean, like different.
You mean like we have my dad just lost his job,
Yeah.
or I've got
Or
I have triplets who are below me, or my sister is the most popular girl in the 9th grade,
as well as,
and she just left my middle school, right? Something like that.
or even just physical things like being neurotypical or atypical.
For sure. Yeah. Why not, right? Yeah. You would definitely want to create a space in the game to have that be unpacked, right? Yeah. And then.
Self-esteem under people showing space.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Social environment norms.
Right. See, that takes me into my next question, okay, which would be, this is everything you want to know about the student, but what do you want to know about Jan Brady Middle School? Right. What is its social context? Right. Because that's going to shape how the players work on it, right?
What part of the country?
Yeah, what part of the country? I mean, like, my school is an elite, independent school serving some of the wealthiest zip codes in the entire country, or indeed the world. That creates a social context that is not created 15 miles up the street from me in Huntington Beach, where there's 5 generations of institutional parking. So, you want to know some things about this. I don't want to step over the next speaker. I'm sorry I talked longer than I meant to. Questions, thoughts? Anything I can answer? Here's where you find me. Email, my own website. If you friend me, I'll friend you back. If you follow me, I'll follow you back. If you whatever. If you've got questions, I'm happy to riff with you. People at sessions like this, I now work actively on projects that we hope together will bring us great fortune, fame, the people's acclaim forever. Yeah.
You talked earlier about the sort of 4 prototypical games.
Right.
What were can you talk more about that?
Yeah. French philosopher. Here's the book. He says basically you can divide games into 4 basic types. Games of agon, which is a skilled player against another skilled player about something skillful. Chess. Okay? Or Project GIF games, Devon, Zerts, those kind of games. Okay? Abstract strategy, or there's the less you have luck, the more you have agon. Okay? What are you getting rewarded for? Agon games are about skill. Agon is Greek for contest, agony. Okay? Alea is Latin for dice. Okay? So these are games of luck. The more luck you have, the less your skill matters. When I'm doing game-based, when I'm doing gamified instructional design, I want it to be mostly this, with enough of that to make it interesting. Okay? You want to use this I lost my mind. Okay, luck. The third one is called mimicry, which is the joy of acting, of experiencing, getting really deep into an avatar. Live action role playing is an act of mimicry. When I do this, a presentation like this, but for total noobs who don't know anything about games, teaching audiences, right? I always put a photo of Klingons, play acting Klingons, because they look of a piece, and everyone knows what Klingon is. Okay. Last of all are games of what is called illings. Illings is Greek for whirlpool. Okay, and that's actually what I call my own creative production house. Illings. I produce podcasts out of it. I write books out of it. I've got some play-by-email game, not a play-by-email, print and play game up there. Illings means whirlpool. So every game should have within it something emergent that you would never think could happen in that game. When that thing happens and you go, "Are you kidding me?" That's illings. Or, "That's the best thing ever." Or, "That's terrible," right? The example that I give is, I grew up in New England, so I had waited my entire adult life for the Red Sox to win a World Series. In 2003, when the Red Sox lost to the Yankees, a famous sports commentator in Boston said, he started his column by saying, "The Red Sox killed my father, and now they're coming for me." I'm like, I totally get it. 1986, Bill Buckner, the ball, he's a Golden Glove, first baseman. Bloop, 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 right through his legs. That's an illing swing. Okay? Let me show you another illing slide. Come on. See the gap? That's illings. You don't know what's going to happen. You presume this is going to go crashing down, but it might not. And the fact that it might not is what leads you in. No! Right? Whatever happens, that's what you get, right? That's illness. You want your game design to have within it the capacity for that kind of thing to emerge. And you only know that by trying to design for it and then test it. Right? You want it to be there. It ought to be there. It can be hard to see it. You can't really design for it. Right? But so that's what Kaiwa says. And basically you can, I just say to teachers, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I want to make this skill test more interesting. Great. Okay, so I'm going to focus my concern on games like this. Great. Okay. But in this case, it's all down here. Right. I don't care about these things. I care about these. Okay. One is not better than the other, right? They're just different kinds of games, right? These can be tricky for people because you can't win them, right? The win state is sort of amorphous, right? If you're lucky, in like This World of Mine, right? The story resolves in a way where you don't feel terrible, right?
At least you try to. Yeah.
You're trying, right? So, there it is. Any other questions? I will stay forever and talk forever. Right? If you have questions, concerns, whatever, you want to riff on your own work, you want to chew stuff over, I'm at your service. I'm here throughout the day. If you email, I'll write back. I say this all the time on my own podcast. You go to Squarespace and host my podcast, and I can see that there are people downloading the podcast in places like Laos. And I say, please write to me. I will write you back. I want to know what you're doing. Why will you not write to me? Not you, but it's like, dude, or dudette, you're in Laos. Please write to me. I don't know who you are. I can't see. You have to tell me. So, in any case,
Thank you,
I'm at your
John.
service.